If you were listening last week, you heard me talking about the best springs that I had kind of seen thus far. And I gave you kind of the disclaimer, like, look, I'm not going to be able to give you anything super concrete here. We're watching some practice, okay? It's not a game. It's not anything that is immediately translatable. I think y'all have been to enough spring football games to realize that it is just that. It's spring football, and there are certainly guys that stand out in the spring that aren't going to impact the fall a lot, and there's certainly some guys that had their issues in the spring that will really come on strong in the fall. But we can just kind of deduce little things here and there from what we watch, some of the lineups that we see, some of the skill sets that we understand. And one of the things that I like about the composition of LSU's wide receiving core is the speed and the over-the-top playmaking ability. Last year, we know that LSU didn't really do that a lot. It was a lot of around the line of scrimmage stuff. It was a lot of intermediate stuff. And LSU was really good at it. They completed as many passes as anybody in the Southeastern Conference. They were the best team in the conference on third downs because of that consistency in the intermediate. They were really efficient at doing that, but it becomes more and more difficult to do when it's all you're doing. And they just weren't an explosive team down the field. And sometimes that happens when your quarterback is not capable of making those throws. That's not the case with LSU. Garrett Nussmeier can make throws down the field, and he wants to make throws down the field. But like Kyron Lacy's not a great deep threat. He's not an elite speed guy. He's not an elite high jumper. He's a productive receiver, really good at contested catches, and had a good career at LSU. But he's not an elite deep threat. Aaron Anderson's not an elite deep threat. There just aren't a lot of elite deep threats that are Aaron Anderson's stature. You can be. Like Rashid Shaheed's not the tallest guy in the NFL, but he's that fast. But Anderson does his best work around the line of scrimmage and the intermediate stuff. And certainly Mason Taylor, huge focus in LSU's offense last year, not going to beat you over the top. So when you talk about your top three pass catchers not being explosive playmakers down the field, it limits what you can do pushing the ball down the field. And I mentioned Chris Hilton last week as a guy that I think changes that. And I still very much feel that way. But he's not alone. You can't just put a safety over the top of Chris Hilton and feel like you've got LSU licked. Like Barion Brown is as explosive a player and as speedy a player with the ball as there is in the Southeastern Conference. That's evidenced by his kick return success. You don't have a lot of guys that run 4, 5, 6 40s that run a bunch of kicks back for touchdowns. Barion Brown runs a bunch of kicks back for touchdowns because he's usually the fastest guy on the field. We were watching a rep 2 weeks ago on a Saturday, and he ran right by DJ Pickett. Now, Pickett grabbed a little jersey and was able to close because Pickett's an elite speed guy too. But Brown showed that flash when he just flat ran straight past him. And you feel like Nick Anderson provides a deep threat. He certainly did for Oklahoma 2 years ago. Not last year, didn't play very much, but he provides a deep threat as well. He's got a bigger frame, but he's still got big-time speed. And those three guys, I think, can terrify you as a defensive coordinator and as a set of safeties. Anderson's worked a little bit more down the field, but that's not going to be the bulk of his work. And certainly Xavier Thomas and what he's done in the kick return game is explosive as well, but I think more of what Xavier Thomas is going to do with this team is going to be in the jet sweep game. They've put him in the backfield a little bit. They've handed him the ball, and certainly you can use him in the intermediate as well, kind of as a backup to Anderson, I think. But the other guys are legitimate speed threats and deep threats. And LSU had that with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, and it showed. LSU had that with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, and it showed. Now, Chase was better deep threat than Jefferson. Jefferson's more of a middle of the field kind of guy. But when you have those guys, it opens everything up. And when you consider how productive LSU was last year in the passing game without the deep threat, thinking about what they could be if they can make that work early in the season is tantalizing. Like, they could be among the best passing offenses in college football. And that's really the goal. And they shouldn't be limited in any way by the personnel they have. There is not anything that you would like to be able to do in the passing game that LSU doesn't have the personnel to do. They've got big frames. They've got smaller and quicker frames. They've got speed and deep threats. They've got tight end weapons, including one in Trey Green that almost nobody else has. Like everything you could want in a wide receiving core and a pass catching group, LSU's got. And oh, by the way, they're returning a quarterback who was top 10 in the country in passing yards last year. So that to me feels like such a great base to work off of. Now, there are other things that have got to work in unison with that. You have to run the ball a little bit to get to the play action to take the shots. You've got to run the ball a little bit to get those defenders creeping up. You've got to pass protect. We know LSU is elite in pass protection up front. Last year, the new guys that are coming in, whatever group of 5 it is that they're going to settle on and figure out who's going to be up there, that group has got to block and keep Garrett Nussmeier upright because he's not going to be able to wiggle out of things like Jaden Daniels was and run for 70 yards against Florida or 50 more against Florida, and you understand what I'm talking about here. Other things have to work in unison with that pass-catching group, but when you look at LSU's wide receiver group as a whole, there is nothing that they should not be able to execute in the passing game. It is a complete group of dynamic players with different skill sets, and that is an awesome, awesome thing at Garrett Nussmeier's disposal. One of the names I haven't mentioned yet here that Brambo did in the Bayou Ford chat is Jelani Watkins. It's fun to talk about Jelani Watkins because Jelani Watkins is real fast. He's running track for LSU this spring, and he has been amazing on the track. He hasn't been out there a lot to practice with football and to produce with football. There are a lot of guys in front of him on this depth chart that may make things a little bit difficult to inch toward the front of that depth chart. But it's a nice little insurance policy to have to go, well, if I need to find a guy who runs about a 10 flat 100, we can go find that guy. Again, may not be necessary for this team, but it's there in the rearview mirror. So look at LSU's wide receiving core. They're on spring break this week. Of course, we are on a Thursday, so they've got one more day of spring break away from school, and they're back in action next week. And they did just make the announcement on what all is going on with the spring finale that is to come next week. I got the press release from Michael Bonnet and LSU, and so I'll kind of read part from it here. Starting next Saturday, 9 a.m., football team's going to walk from football ops into Tiger Stadium. They'll arrive at 9:15. The gates will open at 9:30 from Tiger Stadium on the west side only. There will be individual drills starting at 10:35. They'll have 2 15-minute quarters of a scrimmage at 11:10. Then they'll have a halftime. They don't really know what the second half's going to look like, but they'll do some of that. Then they'll do an autograph session on the field, and the event will wrap up at 1:40. So if you're a fan and you'd like to be there for all of it, gates open at 9:30 next Saturday, and they'll go until just before 2 o'clock. So that's a look at LSU's spring finale inside Tiger Stadium. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.